Welcome back to Mastering Wisconsin Plumbing. I'm host Ryan Boggs, and today we're going to talk about water sizing in Wisconsin. We're going to do it by following the water from municipal main all the way to the last fixture in your home. Before we start the journey, we need to talk about how we decide the size of the piping in the first place. So here's our sizing framework in Wisconsin. So we size the water distribution using Water Supply Fixture Units, or WSFUs. Every fixture in the code has a number assigned to it. Water closet, lavatory, hose bib, all have WSFUs, both hot, cold, and totals. We will then add those WSFUs for every branch line, take into consideration the type of material that it's used, and then we size that pipe accordingly. But WSFUs aren't the whole story. We also have to think about velocity and how these are sized. We have to think about how fast the water is moving inside the water distribution system. We cannot exceed 8 feet per second according to Wisconsin Plumbing Code in the water distribution system. And this is in there for good reasons. High velocity can be noisy, it can wear down inside of pipes, and create a lot of water hammer. Now here's the first important distinction. That velocity limit doesn't apply to the water service line between the curb stop and the building control valve, and it doesn't apply to fixture supply connectors. So let's define those. Fixture supply piping is the piping between the branch in the distribution system and the stop valve at the fixture. The fixture supply connector is the short, flexible, or rigid tube between the stop valve and the actual fixture. In that connector, you can exceed 8 feet per second because it's short and built for it. The code also puts a limit on the total length that these fixture supply connectors can be, and also the minimum size they have to be, depending on the type of fixture that they're serving. All right, let's begin our journey for a drop of water. So now that we know how we're sizing, let's follow the water. We start under the street, hopefully well below that predicted frost level depth. And the first spot that we stop is going to be at the curb stop, sometimes called the curb box. Curb key is the valve that they use to shut it off. Mueller valve, I've heard that a lot because Mueller manufacturer, and they don't actually make every single one of those valves, but they do make a lot of them. And then from the curb stop to the first valve in the building, the code calls that the water service. So here's where 381 says the minimum size for that water service is 3/4 of an inch. That's the smallest we can legally be in the state of Wisconsin for a water service. So curb stop to building control valve has to be 3/4 of an inch minimum. So we can be bigger than that. It really depends on the total WSFUs. It's going to be on that building, elevation, type of fixtures that there is. There's a lot of requirements, but 3/4 inch is the absolute bare minimum for a water service. So I talked about that building control valve. So water service to building control valve, once the service line comes into the building, the first thing it should hit is that building control valve. And that has to be within 5 feet of where that water service enters the building. If you do have a water meter, the rules even get more specific. You need a control valve within 3 feet of developed length downstream from the meter outlet. And if there's a bypass around the meter, so if the meter's 1.5 inches or larger, we're required to have a bypass, and then that bypass would also have to have a control valve. Now, not a lot of homes have a bypass valve. There are probably some, because not a lot of homes are going to have a 1.5 inch meter. The largest meter I've ever installed in any building was actually a 6 inch, and I think there's about 4 of them total in the city of Beloit. So it's just a lot of water usage. From our water service, we go to the distribution system, right? So water service to that building control valve. And now we're no longer in water service, we're in water distribution system. So if you think of water distribution system, everything downstream of the building control valve. So this is that piping that delivers water throughout the inside of the building to every fixture and piece of equipment. So right here, a lot of times, this is where we branch off or have to make that decision. Depending on where we are in the state of Wisconsin, our water is going to be hard, or maybe it's just a little soft. Hard water means it's loaded with calcium and lime from limestone aquifers. That's why you see so many homes with water softeners. A softener uses ion exchange to replace those hardness minerals with sodium, which prevents scale buildup in pipes, fixtures, and appliances. But some people, me included, don't really like the taste of soft water. Those minerals, or what makes hard water hard, add flavor. So if you remove them, I think you make the water taste flat. That's why a lot of homes in the area have 3 separate lines for that water distribution. So they have cold hard water. So this usually serves the kitchen tap, much for the reason that I said, just the taste. Fridge, same idea. And then hose bibs, because why are you putting soft water on your lawn? Cold soft, serving most other cold fixtures. And then hot water, or hot soft, serving all the hot water in the building. So hose bibs are usually kept on hard water, so we're not wasting that softened water on your lawn. But I have had some homeowners where they wanted a hose bib with cold and hot and both softened for specifically washing their cars, and it gives them kind of a spot-free rinse. So here's a nuance of the code. Ultra-specific things in our Wisconsin code. Yes, it does define hot water, and it defines cold water. Hot water, temperature of not less than 110 degrees. Cold water, that's anything less than 85 degrees. It's pretty explicit. So then between those two temperatures, the 85 and 110, Wisconsin Plumbing Code 381 talks about tempered water fits within that range. So from the main branches, we drop into fixture supply piping. Those are runs from the branch to the stop valve at the fixture. Then from the stop valve to the actual fixture inlet, we've got the fixture supply connector. This is the point where the water's velocity can go above 8 feet per second without breaking the rules, because that connector is short and built to handle it. But in the fixture supply piping, just like in the main distribution line, we're still under that 8 feet per second limit. I've seen a lot of people ignore this, and it just puts undue wear on your water distribution system. Finally, we arrive at the fixtures. This is where it all matters. This is why we're hooking this stuff up. We go to kitchen sinks, to toilets, to the showers, to the hose bibs, to laundry tub. This is where all the sizing work goes into account. If we don't have the right water service size, if we're not taking into consideration the pressure requirements for these fixtures, if we're not talking about elevation difference and where these fixtures are, the sheer amount of them, they won't work properly. So that's our journey, starting with how we size, moving from the municipal water main in through the water service, from that curb stop into the building, hitting that building control valve, branching into hard and cold, soft water, down the fixture supply piping, and finally into the fixtures themselves. Every step, the Wisconsin Plumbing Code is there not just to check a box, but to make sure water gets where it needs to go, safely, quietly, and with enough pressure to do the job. Next episode, we'll run through a sample WSFU calculation for a real home so you can see how these rules come together in practice. Until then, remember, it's not just about knowing the code, it's about mastering it. And to leave you with a memorable quote from W.H. Auden, remember, thousands have lived without love, not one without water.